This video is going to focus on a couple of play concepts that I'll be honest with you, I hope the Ravens don't run a whole lot of. Now, they have been successful concepts in the Greg Roman offense in terms of producing big plays, yards per play, touchdowns in short yardage situations, and allowing Lamar Jackson to demonstrate and show the type of athleticism that he has. I hope that we're moving away from them, though, to be honest with you. And I think 2021 showed early in the season, particularly as we move to a 7-2 or 8-3 record, I should say, and #1 seed in the AFC. At one point, we were moving away from the pistol option in terms of something that we did 10, 12 times a game, asking Lamar to possibly keep the football or give it depending on the read. I'm going to show you 2 option plays today and briefly explain both of them, somewhat explain what I think is at least one adjustment that was being shown in this game in 2021. This was week 1 against the Raiders, and it's going to be an option play to this side, and I believe that Lamar is reading Max Crosby, who is the DN there. Now, typically you're not blocking the read man. Patrick Ricard is blocking the read man here. I can still hear 2 really fantastic football coaches that I had the opportunity to be around hollering and using 4-letter words, "Don't block the read man." And you can see that Patrick Ricard is clearly blocking the read man. Lamar he's got to be reading Crosby because he pulls it, he keeps it. If he was to read KJ Wright, then this should be a give. And clearly, he keeps the football, jukes KJ Wright, ends up with a pretty big game. Wanted to run it one time through before I tried to break down some of the elements of it. So let's go through the end zone angle first. You got a 4-3 structure out of the Raiders. KJ Wright, Perryman, and I forget 42's name. 42 and 52 generally are guys that they sit and wait. And what I mean by that is they don't fill immediately. They don't come downhill at angles immediately. They kind of sit, scrape to whatever side laterally, and then try to fill. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. But you're going to get motion here, and on the snap, as the ball is snapped, for a moment, let's just look at the gaps. You got this backside DN, which I think is Nassib. He's in the C gap. He's outside of Ronnie Stanley. 42 is a B gap player. You got a shade or 1 who's an A gap player on the backside. So that A, B, C is covered. You got presumably this Mike front side A. You got a 3 technique D tackle B gap. Max Crosby's lined up in the C gap. KJ Wright is the Sam. You can see he stepped out to play the D gap. On the read, Max Crosby, and one of the things he was doing in that game was he was running down the line initially to give Lamar a pull read, and then he was going vertically at Lamar. Now, you don't get a chance to see that on this play. Why? Because Patrick Ricard blocks him. I contend that this might have been an adjusted play, and I don't know where this was in the context of the game, to be honest with you. First quarter or second quarter or whatever, I'm not sure. But my point is, we knew what he was doing, and you could see it on film. He was running at an angle first and then going at Lamar. Versus on the other side, now Ngakwe's not on here, but when we ran option at Ngakwe was just running right at the mesh point underneath of it to take the tailback, force Lamar to keep the football, which he did when we ran option to that side. But the juke here is pretty badass. If you ask me, it ain't much of a juke for Lamar. I mean, he's got way more than that. That's just a little shimmy, and KJ Wright hardly lays a hand on him. Big gain, I think an 18-yard gain. And you can see that it was a first and 10, and the Ravens are able to pick up a first down. So that is your typical option that most of us would call inside veer. Now, there's inside veer, there's outside veer, and then the next play I'm going to show you is a totally different type of option, even though it looks the same. Now, it is from 2019. Run this back one more time, just so I can show you something I was referring to. These linebackers they've got to sit. Somebody has to play this gap here. Somebody has to play this gap here. Nassib is sitting in the C gap. He's playing it like a base block. He's trying to condense this. He's trying to condense Ronnie Stanley back inside the B gap. Let B gap be smaller and him hold the C gap. You got the strong safety out here to the weak side. He could play the D gap. KJ Wright playing the D gap to the strong side. It kind of doesn't matter because these linebackers go with the running back. This guy's frozen for whatever reason. Leaves too much space for KJ Wright to handle one-on-one with Lamar Jackson. Too much athleticism. So great design of the play. Now, as an aside, and I've said this a couple of times in other videos, personally, I don't want to see us run much pistol option in 2022. I just don't. I just don't. Not that I don't think it's a good play. I do. I mean, I am not an option guy. I have been around option guys. Okay, so let me get that out there. I'm not an option guy in terms of being able to teach the concepts. I understand the concepts to a certain level. There's other people who understand it way better than me. I've been around at least two of those guys who are option people and can teach it in an incredible way and can go out and call plays every night and put people in conflict and gain yards. You know, I just don't think that Lamar Jackson needs to be doing that in 2022 with the way he's shown us that he can close games. All right, back to 2019. This is going to look similar. First of all, you see that it's a diamond formation, okay? And it's 22 personnel. Ricard is playing tight end. That for people that are, you know, a Ricard fan, that would be the versatility that he offers, right? Being able to line up at fullback, line up at tight end, and give you different formations, you know, just depending upon him being on the field. We'll let this run through one time, and it's going to look similar to a lot of you. Now, there's going to be something I'm going to try to recall to point out about these two fullbacks here. They are fullbacks in this formation. They are tight ends personnel-wise. And you can see Lamar keeps it very similar to the previous play, right? Except there's one really big difference. This is not inside veer. This is not outside veer. This is what's called midline. Midline would normally be ran at a 3 technique. So a 3 technique D tackle would be lined up outside shade of your guard. Okay, that would be midline. When you run it against a 5 technique, which this guy is right now, I'm talking about this guy right here, then you're talking about inside veer. Now there is a nearly impossible offense to defend in terms of options called split back outside veer, and it is awful to defend. It'll give you nightmares, and like it has given me. So this guy is a 5 technique right now, and Bill Belichick does this a lot out of his 3-4. He'll play tight 5 techniques, all right, and he'll have 2 outside backers. Now in this case, though, they got a 3-5 personnel look on the field. This isn't a 3-5 defense, though, because this guy's not stacked, but that's a 5th linebacker there, along with Jamie Collins, outside linebacker. I think this is Kyle Van Noy, and then 2 inside linebackers here. I'm going to pause it. All right. So what makes this midline is this what was a 5 technique. Technically, I think he moved down to a 4. Now he didn't. He stayed as a tight 5. Stayed as a tight 5. So some would still call this inside veer. I would not, because of the way the Ravens block it. The right tackle, Orlando Brown, goes out to the outside backer. All right, and they're reading the next guy down, which is a D tackle in the 3-4 structure. Now, Edwards is going downhill. Midline would typically be right off the center's, you know, essentially right off the midline. When we ran it under center, you're literally running it off the right side of wherever the football is. You know, that's the way that I heard him teach it. And we used it to great effect. Edwards is definitely running downhill and then hitting it on the backside, which can develop sometimes, because what happens when you run pistol option, and you didn't see it with that Raiders play, because again, those are slow play inside linebackers. Watch these 2 inside linebackers for the Patriots. They are downhill. Totally different style of play. I prefer the downhill guys. That's just me. Downhill now, attack. Now, but what happens when the guys play downhill, what can happen sometimes is you can get stuff like this, which they're setting up, where you cut it back on the back door. And Gus Edwards had a touchdown run in this exact game on a run play like that. It wasn't midline. So another aspect that I think makes this midline is the right tackle's block, and Nick Boyle is reading this D tackle right here. So since this D tackle is sitting, Nick Boyle is going to loop around, all right? Orlando Brown is stepping to the outside backer, Kyle Van Noy, and Hurst is looping around, you know, to pick up any trash. Probably a strong safety would be my guess. And you can see Boyle goes low on, I think that's Donta Hightower. He's the backside inside linebacker, so here. And Boyle's going to go low on him, which is his specialty. Over here to the right, you can see Hurst is coming for the strong safety. Now technically it's not a strong safety, it's a free safety because, again, they had a fifth linebacker on the field. I believe what the Ravens had done here probably was line up, see where this fifth linebacker was, and then just run away from him. Sheer numbers-wise, the Patriots are outnumbered here with 1, 2, 3 defenders. This nose tackle counts for a half, so that's 3.5. Presumably off screen out here to the right, we have Seth Roberts, and they have a corner, so let's call that 4.5, and then it looks like the free safety's feet there to me. So, yeah, you could say there's 5.5 guys, but the way we're blocking this, with reading this guy, and this linebacker filling downhill, they end up being completely outnumbered here out on the edge. You can kind of see it, even though Hurst doesn't get to his block against the free safety. Midline option, as I understand it, we ran it under center a ton, and you read the 3 technique. Now, this guy's not a 3, he's a tight 5. Technically, you can just call him a 4 because of 3-4 structure. So he'd be playing your B gap. It's a pain in the butt. Midline's a pain in the butt. Now, the Ravens haven't run it a ton, and I'm not advocating for them to do so. I just think it's a cool play. The last thing I will mention here before we're done, and this will appeal to people that are anti-Greg Roman guys, and certainly there are some things not to like at certain times. Look at the width of those 2 fullbacks. I'm calling them fullbacks, even though personnel-wise they are tight ends. They're lined up in the backfield. They're next to the quarterback. They're a fullback. Look at the width of them. We are not running option to our left. Why? Hayden Hurst is too far. If we were running option to our left and it was midline, we'd be reading that guy right there, that D tackle. Okay, because you guys know on this play that I'm calling midline right now, we end up reading that D tackle right there. Boyle is close enough to be able to read that D tackle and either go block one of the inside backers, all right? Or, as you saw as the play develops, Boyle's here, he reads the same thing Lamar does. This D tackle just kind of sit flat and then loop around and go chop down Donta Hightower. He can do that because he's lined up so close to Lamar. What would you say he is, 1.5 yards? At most? I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's 2 yards. I think that's 1.5 yards, right? I don't know what the width is of these hash marks, but I know it's not 2 yards, right? So let's say 1.5 yards from his outside right foot to Lamar's left foot. Look at the width from Lamar's right foot to Hurst's left foot. Now, you may say, why are you going on about this? Guess what? In the playoff game against the Titans that year, their inside backers were calling that out. They were calling that out. What it meant was we were showing our hand because one guy's lined up tight to Lamar, and he's lined up there so he can get to this side and either loop around to get the inside linebacker or insert to go get the inside linebacker. If this D tackle was to do something that was not fundamental and run upfield, then Boyle's track would look like this. Okay, but because that D tackle sits like that, Boyle's track is to loop around, and then he cuts Donta Hightower. We can't do that with Hurst. He's too far away. He can't get there. You know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. It will be too slow developing. For midline, it's slightly slow developing anyway. Now, it's not slow developing because of Lamar Jackson. It's slow developing because it's in the pistol. Midline option should hit like now. The running back should be at the line of scrimmage. The read is quick. It's fast as hell. We ran it. We ran it with a wing, like where Hayden Hurst is, except he'd be up a little closer. And what he would do is he would fold and go get the front side inside backer. And I mean, there was times where our quarterback would step off the midline and boom, I mean 20, 25 yards because everybody's tackling the fullback. And the front side inside linebacker is really the only guy who can see it because the quarterback's back is turned, to certain guys. And I think it might be possible that the Patriots know something's up too. Because look at Hightower's right foot. His outside foot is on the inside shoulder of the guard. And then this is 52, I think. Look at his outside foot. His outside foot is on the inside shoulder of the tackle. So to me, these two inside backers are kicked this way slightly. We would say gap. We would call it a gap, as opposed to his face mask being even with the guard's face mask. I guess that's what I'm saying. Maybe I didn't say it well at first. My apologies. So I think it's possible they knew something as well in terms of the width of these guys' alignments, and maybe that's why Hightower and 52 are kicked over this way a little bit as well, because Hightower is able to get to this front side A-gap, but again, as I mentioned earlier, that creates a little bit of conflict for them on the backside if Gus Edwards is able to cut this back, because everybody else is stepping away from the play. These guys are stepping away, and Gus does hit a touchdown, like a 12-yard touchdown later on in the game on a cutback. It's not really a cutback. It's a call on that midline play where you have that backside A-gap as a possibility for you as a running back. Let me know what you think. These are different plays than the passing plays I've been illustrating. And again, I have mentioned it twice. I've mentioned it in other videos many times. I'd be okay if we put away some of these option plays for 90, 93% of the season and use them sparingly. Lamar could show up to practice next week, which hopefully he does. We all think he's going to, right? He could show up to practice next week and he could do these reads because he's done them so many times. We can move on. We can install more things. He's like a computer who has certain programs installed already. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time in season. You know, keep it there in the system. Update the program, you know, periodically. And use this stuff sparingly. Let Lamar go out there and do the things he was doing in the third and fourth quarters of the first half of the season in 2021, essentially being a savior at that point. I don't want him to be a savior, but you know, give him the ability to throw the football more. Give him the ability to have some spread formations. Use these things as needed to complement or in short yardage situations, but we got to get away from some of our tendencies. I briefly mentioned a tendency there in terms of the width of the fullbacks. Hopefully you guys appreciate it, or maybe you have something else to add to it. But it's definitely a tell. If you're interested in that, I could maybe show 6 or 8 plays to prove it with end zone angles of us running option, but only running it to the side of the wider fullbacks alignment. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Something quick to get done on a little bit of a boring sports day, the day after the Celtics, you know, went up 2-1 on the Warriors late in Game 3 Wednesday night. Appreciate you guys checking out the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section.